My name is Miss Jones. I teach elementary school math, and welcome to my channel, Miss Math Jones. Don't forget to hit that notification bell, like, and subscribe. Now, this video is the second video of 6 videos, and it's designed to help prepare third grade students for the 2024 Math STAR test. It's preparation and practice. Let's go ahead and get started. Now, the topic for this particular video is fractions. In this video are 16 questions that are released Math STAR questions from tests for the years of 2018, 2019, 2021, 2022, and 2023. The questions that are featured in this video have not been created by me. These are test questions that were created by the Texas Education Agency and have been featured on previous versions of the STAR test. A printable document version of this review is available on my blog, mathwithmissjones.blogspot.com. Also, there will be a link in the description where you can click it that will take you directly to the PDF document, free of charge. Again, I just want to remind you that these questions have been released to the public by TEA to allow students an opportunity to practice solving questions that appeared on previous STAR tests. I did not create these questions. Now let's do a quick skill check. To be successful with questions that focus on fractions, you should have prior knowledge or practice with the actual definition of a fraction. A fraction is used to represent smaller equal pieces or equal parts of a whole. A fraction has two parts. It has the numerator, which is the top number, and the denominator, which is the bottom number. Here's an example of a fraction. This fraction is 1/4. Now, the top number is a 1, and that top number is actually called the numerator. Now, the numerator tells us how many equal parts of the whole number we are talking about. And we have the denominator, which is the bottom number, the 4. That tells us how many equal parts make up the whole number. Now, to your right, I'm going to show you an example of a square that shows 1/4 shaded. Now, this orange colored square is the 1. This is going to represent our numerator. This is going to be the 1 part out of 4 that is shaded. That's how you read the numerator and the denominator as it relates to an actual concrete model. And here it is explained. This whole square is made of 4 smaller squares or parts. Because it is made of 4 parts, I know that this square is divided into fourths because it's 4 parts. How much of this whole square is orange? 1 part. So the fraction that represents the orange part of the whole square is 1/4. All right, now that we've completed that quick skill check and information session, let's go ahead and get started. So I just want to give you a quick reminder that it's a really good idea to go over to my blog to print out the paper version with all of these questions on it so that you can actually work it out on paper as you go through the video. Let's go ahead and get started with number 1. Number 1 says 3 friends divided 3 pizzas into pieces. The shaded parts of the models represent the pieces that the friends ate. Model 1, the shaded part shows the amount that Diego ate. Model 2, the one in the middle, the shaded part shows the amount that Victoria ate. And Model 3, the one on the far right, shows the amount of pizza that Wesley ate. Now the question says, which statement describes the fraction of pizza that one of the friends ate? So here we're looking for one true statement or one true answer and 3 false answers. The true answer is the one that we want to pick. Now our answer choices read, answer choice F says Diego ate half of a pizza because he ate the largest piece of his 2 pieces. Answer choice G says Victoria ate 1/3 of a pizza because she ate 1 piece and had 3 equal sized pieces left over. Wesley ate, answer choice H says, Wesley ate half of a pizza because he ate 1 piece of his 2 equal sized pieces. Answer choice J says Victoria ate 3/1 or 3 out of 1 of a pizza because she ate 1 piece and had 3 pieces left over. Now I want you to go ahead and pause your video and solve on your own. Then you can check your work by watching my solution. Okay, now let's take a look at the question. And we're going to go through each answer choice to see what actually makes sense. Okay, so the question says, which statement best describes the fraction of a pizza that one of the friends ate? Answer choice F says Diego ate half of the pizza because he ate the largest piece of his 2 pieces. Now, part of that statement is true. Diego did eat the largest piece of his 2 pieces, right? But that pizza is not divided in half. That blue line shows that pizza actually being divided in half. Did Diego really eat half of his pizza? No. He actually ate more than half of his pizza. So answer choice F is false. Let's look at G. G says Victoria ate 1/3 of a pizza because she ate 1 piece and had 3 equal sized pieces left over. Well, we know from our example that in order for it to be thirds, it needs to be divided into 3 pieces. Victoria's pizza is divided into 4 pieces. So her pizza is actually divided into fourths. So that means that Victoria actually ate 1/4 of her pizza. So answer choice G is also false. Let's look at H. H says Wesley ate half of a pizza. Well, so far that's true because he ate 1 piece, which is true, of his 2 equal sized pieces, which is also true. Everything about answer choice H is true. So right now, answer choice H is looking like our answer. Let's look at J. Victoria ate 3 out of 1 of a pizza because she ate 1 piece and had 3 pieces left over. Now, this statement is completely false because if Victoria ate 3 out of 1 of a pizza, then that would essentially be saying that Victoria ate 3 whole pizzas. So that's false. So that means our correct answer choice is H. So, did you receive the same answer that I showed you? If so, great. If not, that's okay. You may need to have extra practice on this particular skill. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. Here we are at number 2. Number 2 says models R and T are shown. So we have model R on the left and model T on the right. Which statement is true? So you're looking for one true statement. That's going to be your answer, which means 3 of these answers are false. Answer choice A says, the shaded parts of model R and model T are different sizes, but each model represents the same fraction of the whole. Answer choice B says, the shaded parts of model R cannot be written as the fraction 1/5 because the parts are not all equal in size. Answer choice C says the shaded part of model T is 1/4 because the parts are all equal in size. And answer choice D says the total number of parts in model R is 5. So 1/5 of model R is shaded. Go ahead and pause and solve on your own. Then you can check your work by watching my solution. Now, the first thing you want to remember, it's very important when thinking about solving this question. To be a true fraction, all parts must be the same size. All of the parts have to be equal in size. So if you look at model R, all of the pieces of model R are not the same size, which means that model R cannot represent a true fraction. Model T is a proper model for a fraction. Model R is not. So keep that in mind when you go through these answer choices to figure out what's true and what's false. So let's start with answer choice A. A says the shaded parts of model R and T are different sizes. That's true, but each model represents the same fraction of a whole. That's false, because again, model R cannot represent a fraction. Answer choice B says the shaded part of model R cannot be written as a fraction 1/5 because the parts are not all equal in size. That is true. That's very true. That shaded part cannot be written as the fraction 1/5 because the parts are not all equal in size. So it seems like we have our answer, but let's go through and read the other 2 answer choices just to make sure. Because sometimes they put 2 answer choices in there that are very, very similar, and you have to figure out which one you want to choose. Answer choice C says the shaded part of model T is 1/4. Well, that's false because model T has 5 parts. So that shaded part cannot be equivalent to 1/4. It has to be 1/5. So this statement is false. We couldn't even get all the way through the answer choice without it being completely false. Let's look at answer choice D. Answer choice D says the total number of parts in model R is 5. That's true. So 1/5 of model R is shaded. False. Again, model R cannot represent a true fraction because all of the parts must be the same size. They have to be of equal size. So that's false, which means our correct answer here is B. Now, if you were able to figure that out, you are indeed a rock star. If not, that's okay. You're just a rock star in training. And this may be a skill that you need to work on. Let's move on to the next question. Number 3 says, the picture shows 8 seats in a movie theater. Children are sitting in a fraction of the seats. Which expression is equivalent to the fraction of the seats that have children sitting in them? The word equivalent means equal. So that's the same thing as saying which expression is equal to the fraction of the seats that have children sitting in them. So for answer choice F, you have 1/8 plus 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 1/8. Answer choice G, you have 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. Answer choice H, 3/8 plus 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 3/8. Answer choice J, you have 1/8 plus 1/8 plus 1/8. Go ahead and pause and solve on your own. Then check your work by watching my solution. Okay, the picture shows 8 seats in a movie theater. So first I have to ask myself this question. How many seats have children sitting in them? That's important because that's going to tell me if I'm counting by halves or thirds or fourths or fifths or sixths or sevenths or eighths, because that's going to determine my bottom number. That's going to determine my denominator, the amount of seats I actually have. And it says 8 seats, but I have to remember, I have to count them just to be sure. Okay, so I have 8 seats, right? And how many children are sitting in those seats? So I have 8 seats, which means I'm counting by eighths. Eighths. So my denominator is going to be eighths. That's very important. And I have 1, 2, 3 children sitting in seats. So 3 of my seats out of 8 of them, so 3/8 of my seats have children in them. I have 3 children. 3 children that are taking up space in 8 seats. So the fraction of children that are sitting in seats is 3/8. Okay. Now I have to figure out which one of these answer choices represents 3/8. Well, it's definitely not F. F, if I add all of those unit fractions of 1/8 up, then I have 8/8. So it's not F. Let's look at G. I have 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. If I add those unit fractions up, it's 3/3. And 3/3 is equal to 1 whole. So that's not it either. It's not G. Let's look at H. It's 24/8. If I add that up, it's 24/8. And 24/8 is equal to 3 wholes. 24 divided by 8 is 3. So it's looking like J. If I add those 3 unit fractions of 1/8 together, then I should get 3/8, which means that the correct answer is J. Now, hopefully you are able to get the same answer that I did. And if not, that's okay. That may just be a skill you need to work on. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. Okay, question 4 says there are 4 books on a shelf. In the model, the shaded books represent non-fiction books. So that means that those gray books that you see are non-fiction, just the shaded ones. The question asks, which expression represents the fraction of the books on the shelf that are non-fiction. Remember, only the shaded ones are non-fiction. Answer choice A says 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. B, 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. C, 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3. And D, 3/1 plus 3/1 plus 3/1. Now, pause the video and solve on your own, then check your work by watching my solution. So when looking at a model like this, you have 3 books that are shaded, 1 book that's not shaded. But we have to ask ourselves certain questions when we're talking about fractions. So the first question is, how many shaded books are there? 1, 2, 3 shaded books. 3 shaded books means 3 nonfiction books because only the nonfiction books are shaded. The next question I'd be asking myself is, how many books total are there? Because that's going to give me my denominator or my bottom number. Well, I can look at those books and tell that there are 1, 2, 3, 4 books total, right? So then I have to ask myself, well, I know that there are 3 shaded books, which means 3 nonfiction books out of the 4 books that are on the shelf. So what fraction of the books are shaded? 3/4, which means I'm looking for the expression that represents 3/4. Well, let's look at A. If I add those unit fractions together, then I'm going to get 4/4. And 4/4 is equal to 1 whole. So I'm going to put an X next to that one. That's not it. Let's look at B. If I add those unit fractions together, I'm going to get 3/4. And that matches what I'm looking for. So right now, B is looking like our correct answer. But I'm going to go through all of my answer choices just to be sure. Now, if I add those unit fractions up in C, then I'm going to get 3/3. 3/3 is the same as 1 whole. So it's definitely not C. And if I add the fractions in answer choice D, I'm going to get 9/1, which is equal to 9 wholes. So my correct answer here is B. Now, if you are able to figure that out on your own before watching my solution, then that is amazing. If not, it's okay. Again, this just might be something that you need to work on, and that's okay. Now we're looking at number 5. Number 5 says, Carter and Dane shared a package of 8 baseballs equally. What fraction of the package of baseballs did each person get? Answer choice A says 2/8, B says 4/4, C says 4/1, D says 4/8. Now remember, they're sharing a package of 8 baseballs equally. It's 2 people, Carter and Dane, and they're sharing 8 baseballs equally. You're trying to figure out what fraction would each person get. Each person. What fraction will Carter get? What fraction will Dane get? Pause the video and solve on your own. Then check your work by watching my solution. Okay, let's take a look. So they shared a package of 8 baseballs equally. Anytime I see shared equally, I think division. So I have to divide 8 baseballs equally between 2 people. And I have to list it as a fraction. And I have to figure out not how much of a fraction it would be, but what fraction that would each person get. Okay, so the fraction that each person would get. So I have 8 baseballs divided equally by 2 people. Written as an equation, that's 8 divided by 2 equals 4. So that means that each person would get 4 balls, right? Carter would get 4 baseballs. Dane would get 4 baseballs. But that's not a fraction. I have to write it as a fraction. Okay, so 8 baseballs divided equally by 2 people means that each person gets 4 baseballs out of the 8 total baseballs. So out of the total 8 baseballs, Carter would get 4 out of 8, and Dane would get 4 out of 8. So written as a fraction, that is 4/8. So that means that our correct answer is D. Now, if you were able to figure that out on your own, you are amazing. If not, still amazing. But this is just a skill that you might need to work on. Let's look at the next question. Number 6 says, the picture represents the trophies 3 brothers have on a shelf. Okay, so you have all of these trophies and you have 3 brothers. Okay. Each brother won the same number of trophies. What fraction of the trophies did each brother win? So, 3 brothers. Each brother won the same number of trophies. So we're focusing on those things. What fraction of the trophies, remember, did each brother win? Go ahead, pause the video, and solve on your own. Then check your work by watching my solution. Okay, let's get into this solution. So again, 3 brothers. And they each won the same number of trophies. What fraction of the trophies did each brother win? So we're paying attention to those things. Oh, how many trophies are there in total? 6. 6 trophies. Okay, so we have 6 trophies. So it's 6 trophies divided equally, because they each won the same number of trophies, by 3 brothers. 6 trophies divided by 3 brothers. So written as an equation, that's 6 divided by 3 equals 2. So that means that each brother would get 2 trophies. 6 trophies divided equally by 3 brothers means that each brother gets 2 trophies out of the 6 trophies. So written as a fraction, that's 2/6. Our answer is B. If you solved that on your own, I'm impressed. Now, if you didn't solve it on your own, I'm a little less impressed, but still happy that you're doing this review. So, give yourself a pat on the back. This just might be a skill you need to work on. Let's go ahead and look at the next question. Number 7 says 4 fraction models are shown. Model W, Model X, Model Y, and Model Z. The question says, which two models are shaded to show equivalent fractions? Now remember, equivalent fractions are fractions that are equal. And it said which two models. So two of those models are the same. And we have to figure out which two models are the same. Now you should be able to look at them and tell, but what we can do is go through and figure out what fraction each model is actually showing so that you can compare them. Equivalent fractions. Remember, they have to be equal. Two of these models are the same. I want you to think about that and then pause your video and solve this on your own. Then check your work by watching my solution. Now remember, it's two models that are the exact same or equivalent. Equivalent fractions are fractions that are equal. Model W shows the fraction 2/8 because it's two pieces out of 8 that are shaded. Model X shows 2/4 because it's two pieces out of the 4 that are shaded. Model Y shows 3/4 because it's three pieces out of the 4 that are shaded. Model Z is 4/8 because it is four pieces out of the 8 pieces that are shaded. Now, equivalent fractions. In order to figure out what fractions are equal to other ones, there's a little trick. You can just double the fractions, okay? So basically, add the top number to the top number, add the bottom number to the bottom number. You're just doubling them. For example, for model W, 2/8 is equal to 4/16 because 2 plus 2 is 4, 8 plus 8 is 16. 2/4 is equal to 4/8. 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 4 is 8. And if you look at it, 4/8, model X, model Z is 4/8. I think we've already found our equivalent fraction, but let's keep going. Model Y, the equivalent fraction for 3/4 would be 6/8. 3 plus 3 is 6, 4 plus 4 is 8. And model Z, an equivalent fraction for model Z would be 8/16 because 4 plus 4 is 8 and 8 plus 8 is 16. As I said, model X, model Z, both are equivalent or equal to 4/8. Now, you could have also said, well, you know what, Miss Jones? I'm looking at it, and if I draw a line straight down my paper, I think that model X and Z kind of look alike anyway. They are. The same exact amount or area is shaded. So yeah, you could have eyeballed it and figured it out as well. And if you did, rock star. And if you didn't, rock star in training. But you're working on it, and that's all that counts. Let's move on to the next question. Number 8 says the fraction strip shown can be used to find equivalent fractions. What fraction is equivalent or equal to 2/4? Answer choice F says 1/2. Answer choice G says 2/6. Answer choice H says 3/4. Answer choice J says 1/3. Now remember, you're looking for the one that's equivalent or equal to 2/4. Here you can use your doubling trick. But I want you to pause your video and solve on your own. Then check your work by watching my solution. I like fraction strips, and you may be given blank fraction strips to help you during STAR, and you just have to fill them out. But make sure to ask your teacher for a resource sheet or ask to see if blank fraction strips will be on your resource sheet. And if not, you can make your own. It's very easy. Okay, let's go ahead and fill in these blank fraction strips so that you can see how they can be used to help you with equivalent fractions. And again, we're looking for the fraction that's equivalent or equal to 2/4. That very first one at the top, that's one whole. Because it's one whole bar. It's a big old bar. Okay, one whole bar. Now underneath there are two. That one whole is chopped in half. So those are halves. Okay, it was chopped into two halves. So those are halves. It's one half. It's another half. Two halves. Two halves make a whole. Okay, let's look at the third row. And the third row is divided into three sections, which means the third row represents thirds. And you have 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. 3/3 make one whole. Now let's look at the fourth row. The fourth row is divided into four sections. So you have 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4 that make up one whole. Let's look at the fifth row. The fifth row is actually not divided into 5 sections. If you look at it, it's divided into 6 sections, which means that this row is in sixths. 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, 5/6, 6/6. Of a tongue twister there, for me anyway. So 6/6 make one whole. And for the final row, which you would think 7 would be after 6, but no. This row, if you take a look, is divided into 8 pieces, which means it's divided into eighths. 1/8, 2/8, 3/8, 4/8, 5/8, 6/8, 7/8, 8/8 make up one whole. Now, we just took the time to fill in these fraction strips just so that you could see what all different fractions you can make by just dividing one whole into different amounts of little pieces, equal pieces. Very important. Now, the question we're trying to answer is, what fraction is equivalent to 2/4? 1/4, 2/4. So that means that the fraction is going to take up the same amount of space. Now, answer choice F says 1/2. Well, if you look at it, 1/2 and 2/4 do take up the same amount of space, and they are equal. Answer choice G says 2/6. Well, 2/6 is actually smaller than 2/4, so that's not going to work. Let's look at H, 3/4. Well, that's definitely not going to work because 3/4 is actually bigger than 2/4. So that's definitely not going to work. And answer choice J is 1/3. And 1/3 is actually smaller than 2/4 if you look at it. So that's definitely not going to work. So our correct answer is F. So if you were able to correctly answer that question, that is awesome. And if you weren't, that's okay. This may be just another skill that you might need to work on. Let's go ahead and look at the next question. Number 9 says Irene has a group of counters, as shown. Which two fractions can represent the black counters in the group? Which two fractions can represent the black counters in the group? So keep that in mind while you go ahead and pause your video and solve on your own. Then check your work by watching my solution. Okay, we're working with fractions and we're only looking at the black counters. So what I like to do is chop things in half, because a lot of times you can figure out equivalent fractions by either doubling or dividing something in half. So let's just look at the top half of the model, right? So if I just look at the top half of the model, that top half, the black counter would represent 1/4. Well, do I have an answer choice with 1/4? Yes, I do. Two answer choices with 1/4. Answer choice C and answer choice D. Okay, so I chopped my model in half and I determined that the top half represents 1/4. Now, what if I looked at my model as a whole, right? So I'm looking at the whole thing now. Well, now I see that the black counters, looking at it as a whole, they represent 2/8. Well, do I have an answer choice that shows 1/4 and 2/8? I do. Answer choice C. That question wasn't that hard, but if it was hard for you, that's okay. That just means you need a little more practice. Let's go ahead and look at our next question. Number 10 says point P, which is that little dot with the P above it, on the number line represents two equivalent fractions. That one little dot that has the P above it represents two fractions. Okay, which two equivalent fractions can point P represent? Answer choice A says 1/4 and 1/8. B says 1/3 and 2/6. C says 1/4 and 2/8. And D says 1/4 and 3/4. Which two equivalent fractions? Which two equal fractions can point P represent? That's point P. I want you to please pause and solve on your own. Then check your work by watching my solution. Okay, let's take a look at what they want us to do. We're trying to figure out the two equivalent fractions that represent that point, point P, on this number line. Well, this number line goes from 0 to 1, right? But I need to figure out what fraction is represented by this number line. So I'm going to start at 0, right? And then use those marks to count until I get to 1. Okay, so my first one where point P is, that would be 1. The next one would be 2. The next one is 3. When I get to 1, it's 4. So it's 4 spaces. 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4. So that means that I'm counting by fourths. Okay, I'm counting by fourths. So that means that point P would be 1/4. 1/4. Now I know that if I double a fraction, then I can figure out its equivalent or equal fraction. But I'm going to go ahead and finish labeling this number line. Now, again, point P is equal to 1/4. To find the equivalent fraction, you can double the fraction. 1 plus 1 is 2. 4 plus 4 is 8. As a fraction, that's 2/8. So 1/4 is equal to 2/8. That means my correct answer is C. Hopefully that's the same answer that you were able to figure out. And if not, that's okay. Just may need a little bit more practice. Now let's move on to the next question. Number 11 says 4 fraction models are shown. Model 1, Model 2, Model 3, and Model 4. Which 2 models are shaded to show equivalent fractions? Which 2 models are basically the same? Equivalent fractions. So I want you to pause and solve on your own, then check your work by watching my solution. Okay, which 2 models are shaded to show equivalent or equal fractions? Model 1 shows 2/3 because 2 out of the 3 pieces are shaded. Model 2 shows 4/6 because 4 out of the 6 pieces are shaded. Model 3 shows 1/3 because 1 out of the 3 pieces are shaded. And model 4 shows 4/4 because 4 out of the 4 pieces are shaded. And we're looking for the 2 models that are the same. Look at model 2. What if we chop model 2 in half and only paid attention to the top half? Then what would be the fraction? 2/3. What other model is equal to 2/3? Model 1. So that means that models 1 and 2 are equivalent. And F is our answer. Hopefully that's the same answer that you were able to figure out, and I'm sure it was. But if you did not figure that out on your own, that's okay. That's just a skill that you need to practice. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question. Number 12 says, point U on the number line represents equivalent fractions. What is true about point U? True U. That rhymes. Okay. Complete the sentences by selecting the correct answers from the drop-down menus. Point U can represent blank or blank. The two fractions are equal because they both blank. Now, remember with these drop-downs, you're going to click the little arrows on the side and then some answer choices are going to be there. You can only pick one and you have to pay very close attention to what you're choosing. This type of question was new this year in the spring for the 2023 Staar, okay, as far as the drop downs. So make sure that you're paying attention when you have different types of answer choices, ways to choose your answers. Pay very close attention. Now, we're trying to figure out what's true about point U. And again, point U is on that number line. So I want you to pause and solve on your own, then check your work by watching my solution. So the very first thing you want to do with this question is figure out what unit fraction you're counting by on that number line. So I would take a look at it and start at 0. If you start at 0 and you go from 0 to the first mark, that's 1. Second mark, 2. Third mark, that's where point U is, that's 3. 4, 5, 6. So once you get to the number 1, that's 6 marks, which means you're counting by sixths. And the letter U is on the third out of 6 marks, which means that point U can represent 3/6. So if you click here, it's going to bring up some answer choices. 2/6, 4/8, 3/6. And as we said, U can be represented by 3/6. So here you would click 3/6, but you're not finished because you have 2 other answers you have to select. So you click there to see what your next options were for your answer choices. Now, 6/6 would be 1 whole. That would be all the way at the end, so that's not it. 3/4, maybe has a 3 in front of it, or a 3 as the numerator, so maybe. Okay, what about 1/2? Well, actually, that's more like it because look at point U. Point U is directly halfway between 0 and 1. So that would be a very good answer. That would be your next answer choice, 1/2. So point U can represent 3/6 or 1/2. The two fractions are equal because they both, your next set of arrows, now you have these choices, are exactly halfway between 0 and 1. Well, yeah, that's true. Are not exactly halfway between 0 and 1? No, no. Are more than halfway between 0 and 1? No. So the only one that makes sense is the first option, are exactly halfway between 0 and 1, because that dot, point U, okay, is halfway between 0 and 1. So this is a multiple select question. You have 3 answers here. And when you see questions like this, make sure that you answer each one. You have to choose a response for each box. Don't forget to do that. Now, if you are able to correctly figure this out, great. If not, that's okay. This type of question is very tricky. Let's take a look at number 13. Number 13 says, which comparison is true? Answer choice A says 2/4 is greater than 2/6. Answer choice B says 2/3 is equal to 2/4. Answer choice C says 2/6 is greater than 2/4. And answer choice D says 2/3 is less than 2/8. Go ahead and pause and solve on your own, then check your work by watching my solution. Okay, 2 very important things. important thing number one. The smaller the denominator is, the larger the fraction piece is. So if it has a small denominator, the fraction piece is really big. So imagine a pizza, right? And if it's only cut into 4 pieces, those pieces are going to be really, really big. But what if you had to cut that same pizza into 12 pieces? Then the pieces would be really small, right? So that brings me to my next important thing. The larger the denominator, the smaller the fraction piece is. So it's opposite. We're used to big number, big piece. In fractions, it's opposite. Small number at the bottom, big piece. Big number at the bottom, small piece. Always think of it like pizza. Okay, so let's go back to figuring out the solution. So let's look at A. 2/4 is greater than or bigger than 2/6. All right, let's see if that's true. Have my handy dandy fraction pieces here. And I'm going to show you 2/4 versus 2/6. Okay, that's 2/4. That's 2/6. Is 2/4 greater than 2/6? Yes, that's true. It is bigger. All right, let's move on to B. Using my fraction strips, 2/3 is equal to 2/4. 2/3, 2/4. Are those equal? Is that the same amount of space? No, it's not. So that's false. Now let's look at C. C looks familiar. Do you know why? Because all they did was flip the numbers from A. Now, if 2/4 is greater than 2/6, then we should know that 2/6 is not greater than 2/4 because we already figured out that 2/4 was bigger than 2/6. So that's false. We don't even need to create another fraction strip model because we can look at A and tell that that's false. Now let's look at D. 2/3 is less than 2/8. Okay, well, let's look at 2/3 and 2/8. Well, that's false. 2/3 is definitely not less than 2/8. So looks like we have our correct answer, and that is answer choice A. If you were able to figure that on your own, excellent job. If you weren't, that's okay. Just maybe something you need to work on. Now let's go ahead and move on to our next question. Number 14 says, Hector has 4 circles that are the same size. He divided and shaded the first circle to represent the fraction 4/6. Hector will correctly divide and shade the other circles to represent fractions less than 4/6. So that means he wants the rest of those circles to represent fractions that are smaller or less than 4/6. Which answer choice is not a way? Anytime you see not, that means that you want the false answer. You want the wrong answer. Which answer choice is not a good way that Hector could divide and shade a circle to represent a fraction less than 4/6. So that means that 3 of these answer choices are ways that he could represent less or smaller than 4/6. So 3 of these answer choices correctly tell you how he can create fractions smaller than 4/6. One of these is going to be bigger than 4/6. That's the answer that you're looking for. I want you to go ahead, pause and solve on your own, then check your work by watching my solution. Now remember, Hector is going to correctly divide and shade the other circles to represent fractions less than 4/6, which answer choice is not a way that he could represent a fraction less than 4/6. Let's look at A. A says he could divide a circle into 6 equal parts and shade one of the parts. So let's divide this first circle right after the one that he correctly shaded as 4/6, right? Let's divide that very next circle into 6 equal parts and shade one of the parts. So go ahead and divide it into 6 equal parts. All right, so now that circle is divided into 6 equal parts. And I'm going to shade one of the parts. Okay. Now, is this less than 4/6? It is. This is a way that he could divide and shade a circle to represent less than 4/6. So that means that this is not the answer I want. I don't want it because that represents 1/6 and that is less than 4/6. And we're looking for the wrong way. That's actually the right way to do it. We want the way that he would not do it. That is the way he would do it, okay? Let's look at answer choice B. He could divide a circle into 8 equal parts and shade 4 of the parts. Okay, let's do that with the next circle. I'm going to divide it into 8 equal parts. Okay? And shade 4 of the parts. Okay, so I divided it into 8 parts and I shaded 4 of the parts. Okay. So that represents the fraction 4/8. It's 4/8 less than 4/6. It is. So that means that's not what I want either. We want something that's not less than 4/6. Not. That is less than 4/6. That's not what we want. Let's move on to C. He could divide a circle into 4 equal parts. So I divided that circle into 4 equal parts, the last one, and shade 4 of the parts. So you divide it into 4 parts and then shade all 4 parts. Shade this part, shade that part, and that one. Okay, now the way that this model is set up, it's equal to 4/4. And that means the whole thing is shaded. So actually, that's definitely not less than 4/6. It's actually more than 4/6. So that is not a way to represent a fraction less than 4/6. And just to make sure, let's look at D. He could divide a circle into 6 equal parts and shade 3 of the parts. That would be 3/6. Now we're moving into number 15. Derek drew 2 congruent figures and then shaded 1/4 of each figure. Which figures could be the ones Derek drew and shaded? Congruent figures. Congruent means basically the same, okay? So Derek drew 2 congruent figures and then shaded 1/4 of each figure. Which figures could be the ones Derek drew and shaded? I want you to pause and solve on your own, then check your work by watching my solution. Okay, now let's go ahead and solve this. Derek drew 2 congruent figures. Congruent basically means the exact same. So, same shape, same size. They don't have to be divided the same way, but they have to be the same shape, the same size. cannot be A. Look at A. Two circles, same shape, same size. No, they're not divided the same, but the problem with A is the circle on the right, that circle is not divided into equal parts. For it to be a true fraction, for it to represent a true fraction, has to be divided into equal parts. One of the circles is, the other one is not. So it cannot be A. Let's look at B. Are those two squares the exact same size? No. They're both divided into equal parts, right? And they both represent 1/4, but they're not the same size. Same shape, but not the same size. Now let's look at C. We're looking for 1/4. And the shapes in C, those circles are divided into 5 parts. So those are fifths, which means that the fractions represented by C is 1/5. So it cannot be C. So the only answer choice we're left with is D, which you might be saying, well, they're not divided the same way. No, they're not, but they're the exact same shape. They're the exact same size. Both of the rectangles are divided equally into 4 parts. And in both of those rectangles, exactly 1/4 is shaded. So that means that those two rectangles are congruent and they both represent 1/4. So our answer is D. Now, hopefully you were able to choose the correct answer. And if you weren't, that's okay. That means that you may need some practice with recognizing congruent figures with fractions. Let's move on to our last question, the moment you've been waiting for. I know. Okay, number 16 says, an ant crawled 2/8 yard from an ant mound. Started at the ant mound and crawled 2/8. On which number line does point A, the dot with the A below it, represent the ant's position after crawling 2/8 of a yard? Okay, well, let's take a look. Underlined are all the things that you need to remember. He crawled 2/8 of a yard away from the mound. And on which number line does point A represent the ant's position after he crawled those 2/8 of a yard? Go ahead, pause your video and solve on your own. Then check your work by watching my solution. So again, we're going to underline these important things that we need to remember. All right. I'm starting with numbering my marks on answer choice A to see what unit fraction we're counting by. So for answer choice A, I marked the first one from 0 to 1, that's 1. Then where that A is, that's 2. The next mark would be 3. And once we get all the way to 1, that's 4 marks, which means we're counting by fourths. We're looking for 2/8. Answer choice A represents 2/4. So that's not it. We want 2/8. Let's look at answer choice B. So we start at 0 and we count our first mark, which is 1. The next mark would be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means we're counting by eighths. And the dot or the point A, right, is at the first mark, which means the fraction that represents answer choice B number line is 1/8. We're looking for 2/8, so it's not B. Let's look at C. Start at 0, and then at the first mark, we start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that means we're counting by tenths. And our point A is at the second mark, which means the fraction that's represented by this number line for answer choice C is 2/10. That's not the answer we're looking for either, which means it has to be D, right? Well, let's make sure. So 0, once we get to our first mark, we start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Answer choice D's number line, we're counting by eighths, and our point A is at the second mark, which means the fraction represented by this number line for answer choice D is in fact 2/8. That is the correct answer. Our answer is D. So hopefully that's the same answer that you chose. And if so, you're as amazing as I know you are. And if you did not choose answer choice D, that's okay. You may just need to work on the skill of recognizing fractions with number lines. Now, we have actually, so sad, so good. All right, you have completely finished, okay? This video, 16 questions reviewing fractions from questions that were taken from the actual STAR test. Congratulations. I will see you on your next STAR prep and practice video. Have a good day. I hope this helped.